Nathan Cole had spent his life flipping houses for profit until he found 2 abandoned children in the latest property he purchased. A desperate little girl and her baby brother needed him, and for the first time, business took a back seat to something far more important. But could he really become the father they needed? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. Nathan Cole stepped out of his sleek black Mercedes and looked up at the old Victorian house. At 45, he was at the top of his game in the real estate business. His company, Cole Properties, had transformed dozens of rundown buildings into luxury homes that sold for millions. This old place would be no different. Another day, another dollar, he muttered as he adjusted his expensive tie and walked toward the house he'd just purchased at auction for a steal. The wooden porch creaked under his polished shoes. Nathan frowned, making a mental note to have the entire thing torn out and replaced with something more modern. The key stuck in the lock, and he had to jiggle it several times before the door finally swung open. The musty smell hit him immediately. He wrinkled his nose and stepped inside, his footsteps echoing through the empty rooms. Dust particles danced in the streams of light coming through the dirty windows. "We'll knock out this wall," he said to himself, already calculating profits in his head. Open up the space, add some high-end appliances. That's when he heard it. A small whimper coming from somewhere inside the house. Nathan froze. The house was supposed to be empty. The previous owners had been evicted weeks ago. "Hello?" he called out, his voice bouncing off the bare walls. "Is someone there?" No answer came, but he heard the sound again, definitely coming from the living room. He walked cautiously toward the noise, his heart beating faster. In the corner of the empty living room, huddled against the wall, he saw them. A little girl, no older than 9, with tangled brown hair and dirty clothes, holding a baby wrapped in a thin, stained blanket. Nathan's breath caught in his throat. The girl looked up at him with wide, frightened eyes, clutching the baby tighter to her chest. "Who are you?" Nathan asked, his voice softer than he'd intended. The girl's chin trembled. "Please, don't take us away," she whispered. Nathan took a step closer, and she pressed herself further against the wall. "Where are your parents?" he asked, kneeling down to appear less threatening. Tears filled the girl's eyes. "Mommy told me to stay here. She said she'd come back, but she never did." Her voice broke. "That was 3 days ago. 3 days. These children had been alone for 3 days." The thought hit Nathan like a punch to the gut. "You've been here alone all this time?" he asked, noticing how thin the girl looked, how pale the baby's tiny face was. She nodded, a tear sliding down her dirt-streaked cheek. "I found some crackers in the cupboard, but they're all gone now. And Tommy's hungry." She looked down at the baby in her arms. Nathan ran a hand through his salt and pepper hair. This wasn't a business problem. This wasn't something he could solve with money or contracts. For the first time in years, he felt completely out of his depth. "My name is Nathan," he said gently. "What's yours?" "Lily," the girl whispered. "And this is Tommy. He's my brother." Nathan glanced around the empty house. No furniture, no food, nothing but dusty floors and bare walls. How had these children survived? "Lily, you and Tommy can't stay here," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "It's not safe." Fear flashed across her face. "Please don't call the police. They'll take Tommy away from me. Mommy said they would split us up if they found us." The desperation in her voice made Nathan's chest tighten. He'd always prided himself on being a businessman first. Emotions had no place in real estate. But looking at these abandoned children, he felt something crack open inside him. "I'm not going to call the police right now," he said. "But you need food, and this little guy probably needs diapers, right?" Lily nodded, a flicker of hope in her eyes. "Okay, here's what we're going to do," Nathan said, making a quick decision. "You and Tommy are coming with me to get some food and supplies. Then we'll figure out what to do next. Is that okay?" Lily hesitated, studying his face. "You won't take Tommy away from me?" "I promise I'll keep you two together," Nathan said, surprised by how much he meant it. 20 minutes later, Nathan found himself pushing a shopping cart through a grocery store with a 9-year-old girl and a baby he barely knew. Lily had cleaned up a bit in the store bathroom, and Nathan had bought them both clean clothes from the department next door. "What does Tommy eat?" Nathan asked as they walked down the baby aisle. Formula, Lily said, pointing to a can. But it's expensive. Nathan reached for the formula without hesitation. Don't worry about that. By the time they finished shopping, the cart was full of diapers, formula, baby clothes, food, and toiletries. Lily's eyes were wide as Nathan paid without even flinching at the total. Back in the car, with the baby securely fastened in a new car seat and Lily buckled in beside him, Nathan made some calls. His assistant, Rachel, was surprised to hear him. Cancel all his meetings for the next few days. Everything okay, boss? She asked. I've run into a situation, Nathan said, glancing in the rearview mirror at Lily, who was carefully giving Tommy a bottle of formula. I need you to call my lawyer, Jack Morris. Tell him I need to see him at my house tonight. It's urgent. After hanging up, Nathan drove to his large empty house in the suburbs. He'd bought it 5 years ago after his divorce, but he rarely spent time there. It was more of a showpiece than a home, pristine furniture, modern art, and not a speck of dust anywhere. You live here? Lily asked, her eyes wide as they pulled into the circular driveway. Yes, Nathan said, realizing how cold and uninviting it must look to a child. Inside, Nathan scrambled to make space for a baby. He cleared off a dresser in one of the guest rooms to change Tommy's diaper, wincing at his own awkwardness. Lily watched him carefully, then stepped in. You have to lift his legs like this, she demonstrated, her small hands gentle but confident. You take good care of him, Nathan observed. Lily's face grew serious. Mommy works a lot. Worked, I mean. I don't know where she is now. The sadness in her voice made Nathan pause. Lily, can you tell me more about your mom? What's her name? Sarah Reynolds, Lily said, securing the clean diaper. She cleaned houses and offices at night. She said it paid better. Nathan made a mental note of the name. And your dad? Lily's expression darkened. He left when Tommy was born. Mom said he couldn't handle another kid. After getting the children settled with food and clean clothes, Nathan sat in his home office, waiting for his lawyer. Jack Morris arrived promptly at 8, his eyebrows shooting up when Nathan explained the situation. You found abandoned children in a foreclosed house, and instead of calling Child Protective Services, you brought them home, Jack asked incredulously. Nathan rubbed his tired eyes. The girl is terrified of being separated from her brother. I couldn't just... Nathan, this isn't like you, Jack interrupted. You're the guy who once evicted a family on Christmas Eve because business is business. Nathan flinched at the memory. Maybe it's time I stopped being that guy. Jack sighed. What do you want me to do? Find out everything you can about Sarah Reynolds, where she worked, if she has family, what happened to her, and I need to know what my options are here. Options? Nathan hesitated, surprising himself with his next words. If we can't find their mother, I want to know what it would take for me to become their guardian. Jack's mouth fell open. You're not serious. Just then a small cry came from upstairs. Without thinking, Nathan stood up. We'll talk more tomorrow, he told Jack. Right now, those kids need me. As Jack left, shaking his head in disbelief, Nathan headed upstairs. He found Lily trying to comfort Tommy, who was fussing in the makeshift crib Nathan had created from cushions. I think he's still hungry, Lily said worriedly. Let's make him another bottle, Nathan suggested. In the kitchen, as Nathan awkwardly prepared the formula according to Lily's instructions, he watched the girl's careful attention to her brother. She'd been thrust into a role no child should have to play, yet she handled it with remarkable grace. Lily, Nathan said softly, I promise you I'm going to help you and Tommy. Whatever happens, I won't let anyone separate you. Lily looked up at him, hope and fear battling in her eyes. Why are you helping us? Nathan thought about his life, the deals, the properties, the money. None of it had filled the emptiness he'd carried since his divorce, since learning he could never have children of his own. Because sometimes, he said, choosing his words carefully, we find the things we need in the most unexpected places. Later that night, after both children had finally fallen asleep, Nathan sat in a chair near their room, his mind racing. Tomorrow, he would have to start making calls. To authorities, to investigators, to anyone who could help him figure out what happened to Sarah Reynolds. But tonight, watching over these two vulnerable children who had somehow crashed into his carefully controlled life, Nathan felt something he hadn't experienced in years: purpose. His phone buzzed with a message from his assistant about a lucrative development deal they were closing tomorrow. For the first time in his career, Nathan didn't care about the money. Looking at Lily's peaceful face as she slept with one arm protectively around her baby brother, Nathan realized that in trying to save these children, he might be saving himself, too. Morning sunlight streamed through the windows of Nathan's modern kitchen. He stood by the stove attempting to make pancakes, while Lily sat at the counter feeding Tommy his formula. "Are they supposed to be this black?" Nathan asked, frowning at the burnt pancake in the pan. Lily giggled, a sound that surprised both of them. "Mom always said you have to wait for the little bubbles before you flip them." Nathan smiled, scraping the ruined pancake into the trash. "I guess I have a lot to learn." The doorbell rang, interrupting their breakfast attempt. Nathan checked his watch. It was only 8:30 a.m. "Stay here," he told Lily, who immediately looked worried. Opening the front door, Nathan found Jack Morris standing there with a manila folder in his hand and a serious expression on his face. "I've got information," Jack said, stepping inside, without waiting for an invitation. "And we need to talk before you get in any deeper with those kids." Nathan led his lawyer to his home office, closing the door so Lily wouldn't overhear. "What did you find out about their mother?" Nathan asked, settling behind his desk. Jack opened the folder. Sarah Reynolds, age 28, worked as a night cleaner for Executive Cleaning Services, single mother of 2. And Nathan... Jack paused, his expression grim. "She's dead." Nathan felt like someone had punched him in the stomach. What happened? Apparent drug overdose. Her body was found 3 days ago in a motel room across town. According to the police report, there were signs of a struggle, but they're treating it as an accidental overdose for now. Nathan shook his head. Lily said her mother told them to stay in the house and that she'd come back. That doesn't sound like someone planning to take drugs. The police found evidence that she was dealing to make extra money, Jack continued. It's possible something went wrong with a customer. Nathan ran a hand through his hair, thinking about the little girl in his kitchen who didn't yet know her. Mother was never coming back. What about family, he asked. Grandparents, aunts or uncles? That's where it gets complicated. Sarah has a sister, Patricia Reynolds. She lives about 2 hours away. The police have contacted her and she's coming to claim the children. Nathan felt a strange tightness in his chest. When? She'll be here this afternoon. Child Protective Services has been notified and they'll facilitate the handover. Handover, Nathan repeated, hating how cold it sounded. What do we know about this sister? Is she stable? Will she keep the children together? Jack shrugged. All I know is she's the next of kin. By law, she has priority over a stranger who found them in an empty house. The reality of the situation hit Nathan hard. Of course, these children weren't his. He'd known them for less than 24 hours. Yet the thought of them leaving made him feel unexpectedly hollow. I need to tell Lily about her mother, Nathan said quietly. Jack placed a hand on his shoulder. Nathan, I've known you for 15 years. I've never seen you get attached to anything except real estate deals. Don't make this harder on yourself. After Jack left, Nathan stood in the hallway gathering his courage. How do you tell a 9-year-old girl that her mother is dead? He found Lily in the guest room carefully changing Tommy's diaper. She'd arranged the supplies neatly on the dresser, creating some order in the chaos of their situation. Lily, Nathan said gently, sitting on the edge of the bed. Can we talk? Something in his tone must have alerted her, because her small hands stilled and her eyes filled with immediate fear. Is it about my mom? Nathan nodded, patting the space beside him. Lily finished with Tommy's diaper and picked him up, holding him close as she sat next to Nathan. The police found your mom, Nathan began, choosing his words carefully. Lily, I'm so sorry, but your mom has died. Lily stared at him, her face unnaturally still. Then she shook her head. No. She promised she'd come back. She promised. Nathan felt a lump form in his throat. I know, sweetheart. I'm sure she wanted to come back to you. How? Lily whispered, tears filling her eyes. How did she die? Nathan hesitated. How much should he tell this child? The police think she took some medicine that made her very sick. Lily's face crumpled, and she began to sob, her small body shaking with grief. Tommy, sensing his sister's distress, started to cry too. Nathan awkwardly wrapped an arm around Lily's shoulders, feeling completely out of his depth, but knowing she needed comfort. "What's going to happen to us now?" Lily asked between sobs. "They'll split us up. Tommy will go to a baby home and I'll go somewhere else. Mom always said that's what happens." Nathan took a deep breath. "Your Aunt Patricia is coming this afternoon. She's going to take you both home with her." Lily's head shot up, her tear-stained face suddenly alert. "Aunt Patty, we can't go with her." The fear in her voice alarmed Nathan. "Why not?" "She hates us," Lily said, holding Tommy tighter. "She told Mom that she ruined her life by having us and—" Lily lowered her voice to a whisper. "She's mean. The last time we stayed with her, she locked me in a closet because I spilled juice on her rug." Nathan felt a chill run down his spine. "Did you tell your mom about this?" Lily nodded. "Mom said we'd never have to stay with Aunt Patty again. Please, Nathan, don't make us go with her." Before Nathan could respond, the doorbell rang again. Looking at his watch, he frowned. It was too early for the aunt or child protective services. "Stay here," he told Lily. "I'll be right back." When he opened the front door, Nathan was surprised to see Rachel, his assistant, standing there with a stack of papers. "You haven't been answering your phone," she said, walking past him into the house. "We have the zoning approval for the Riverside project, but we need your signature today or we lose our place in line." Nathan had completely forgotten about the Riverside project, a $50 million development that had been consuming his life for months. "Rachel, this isn't a good time," he began. She raised an eyebrow. "Not a good time?" "Nathan, we've been working on this deal for over a year. What could possibly be more important?" A small sound from the staircase made them both turn. Lily stood there, Tommy in her arms, watching them with red-rimmed eyes. Rachel's mouth fell open. "There are children in your house. Actual children." Nathan sighed. "It's complicated. Let me explain." Over the next 20 minutes, Nathan told Rachel everything, while Lily sat quietly on the couch, holding Tommy and occasionally wiping away tears. "So this aunt is coming to take them?" Rachel asked, glancing at the children with concern. "Yes, but Lily says she's abusive," Nathan replied quietly, making sure Lily couldn't hear. Rachel's eyes widened. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know," Nathan admitted. "Legally, I don't have any standing here." Rachel studied her boss's face. "You care about them," she said, sounding surprised. Nathan looked over at Lily, who was softly singing to Tommy. "I do. And I can't send them somewhere they'll be hurt." The sound of a car pulling into the driveway interrupted their conversation. Through the window, Nathan saw a woman with obvious signs of plastic surgery step out of a luxury SUV and look up at the house with a frown. "That must be the aunt," he said. "I'll handle the Riverside papers," Rachel told him, gathering her things. "You deal with this." As Rachel left through the back door, Nathan opened the front door to greet Patricia. Reynolds' daughter Patricia was dressed expensively but tastefully, her blonde hair perfectly styled. She looked like she belonged in Nathan's wealthy neighborhood. "Mr. Cole?" "I'm Patricia Reynolds," she said, extending a manicured hand. "I understand you've been keeping my niece and nephew." "Please come in," Nathan said, shaking her hand briefly. Something about the woman immediately put him on edge. Patricia stepped inside, her eyes critically taking in the expensive furnishings before settling on Lily and Tommy on the couch. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "There you are," she said, her voice suddenly syrupy sweet. "Aunt Patty has come to take you home." Lily didn't move, her arms tightening around Tommy. The fear in her eyes was unmistakable. "Ms. Reynolds," Nathan began carefully, "Lily seems concerned about going with you. She mentioned some incidents from the last time she stayed at your home." Patricia's face hardened for a moment before smoothing back into a pleasant expression. "Children exaggerate, Mr. Cole. My sister was troubled. She filled the poor child's head with all sorts of nonsense about me." She turned to Lily. "Go get your things, dear. We need to get on the road before dark." "They don't have much," Nathan said. "Just what I bought them yesterday." Patricia raised an eyebrow. "How generous. Of you. Well, we should still get going. Nathan knelt in front of Lily. Can I talk to you for a minute in private? Lily nodded, and Nathan led her to the kitchen, aware of Patricia's eyes following them. Are you sure about what you told me? Nathan asked quietly. About your aunt being mean to you? Lily nodded, her eyes filling with tears again. Please don't make us go with her, Nathan. She doesn't even like Tommy. She always called him that crying thing when she visited Mom. Nathan felt torn. He had no legal right to keep these children, but everything in him screamed that sending them with Patricia was wrong. Just then, his phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Rachel. Stall her. I'm calling Jack. We need a temporary restraining order based on the child's claims of abuse. If we can get emergency temporary custody, we can investigate further. Nathan took a deep breath. Lily, I need you to trust me. Go back out there with your aunt, but I'm not giving up, okay? I promise. Lily looked uncertain but nodded bravely. Back in the living room, Nathan forced a smile. Ms. Reynolds, before you take the children, there are some papers we need to go over. Child Protective Services asked me to complete them. It was a lie, but it might buy them some time. Patricia checked her watch impatiently. Can't they just email me the forms? I have a dinner reservation at 7, and it's a long drive back. The callousness of her comment, prioritizing dinner, reservations over 2 orphaned children, strengthened Nathan's resolve. I'm afraid not. They were very specific, he said, pretending to search through a drawer. Why don't I make some coffee while I look for them? As Nathan busied himself in the kitchen, stalling for time, he could hear Patricia on her phone in the living room. Yes, I'm getting them now, she was saying quietly. Of course, I'll keep up my end of the deal. You'll have the house by next week. Nathan frowned. What deal? What house? His phone buzzed again. Another message from Rachel. Jack is at the courthouse now. Keep her there as long as you can. Nathan brought coffee to Patricia, who was now sitting as far from the children as possible, scrolling through her phone. Ms. Reynolds, Nathan said casually, what are your plans for Lily and Tommy? Will they have their own rooms at your place? Patricia looked up, annoyed at the question. They'll have adequate accommodations, she said dismissively, and Lily's schooling. She'll need to be enrolled somewhere. Patricia's smile tightened. Mr. Cole, while I appreciate your concern, these details are really none of your business. The children are my family, not yours. The front door opened, and Jack Morris walked in, accompanied by a woman in a business suit who carried an official-looking folder. Nathan, Jack said, nodding. Ms. Reynolds, I presume. I'm Jack Morris, Mr. Cole's attorney, and this is Sandra Wilson from Child Protective Services. Patricia stood up, her face flushing with anger. What is this? I was told I could pick up the children today. Sandra stepped forward. Ms. Reynolds, we've received concerning information about potential past incidents of child abuse. Until we can investigate these claims, Judge Harmon has granted an emergency temporary custody order, placing the children with Mr. Cole. She handed Patricia a document, which the woman snatched angrily. This is ridiculous, Patricia spat. These are my sister's children. I'm their only living relative. The judge's primary concern is the children's safety, Sandra replied calmly. This is temporary while we conduct our investigation. You'll have an opportunity to respond to the allegations at the hearing next week. Nathan watched as Patricia's perfectly composed facade cracked. For a moment, raw fury showed on her face as she glared at Lily. You little liar, she hissed. Just like your mother. The venom in her voice confirmed everything Lily had said. Nathan moved protectively toward the children. I think you should leave now, Ms. Reynolds, he said firmly. Patricia gathered her purse, her hands shaking with rage. This isn't over. Those kids are worth a lot more to me than you know. As she stormed out, slamming the door behind her, Nathan turned to Jack. What did she mean by that? Jack shook his head. I don't know, but I don't like it. Rachel mentioned overhearing something about a deal involving a house. I heard that too, Nathan said, thinking hard. Something's not right here. Lily approached Nathan cautiously, Tommy still in her arms. Does this mean we can stay with you? She asked, hope in her voice. Nathan looked at Sandra, who nodded. For now, yes. We'll need to do a home study and background check on Mr. Cole, but given the circumstances, the judge agreed this was the safest immediate placement. After Sandra and Jack left, Nathan sat with Lily on the couch, his mind racing with questions about Patricia's strange comments. "Lily," he asked gently, "did your mom own anything valuable? Maybe a house or property somewhere?" Lily thought for a moment. "Mom always talked about Grandma's house. She said it would be ours someday, and we wouldn't have to move around anymore." "Do you know where this house is?" Lily shook her head. "But Mom kept papers about it in her special box. She always took it with her." Nathan made a mental note to look into Sarah Reynolds' possessions. If there was property involved, it might explain Patricia's unusual interest in the children. That night, after putting Lily and Tommy to bed, Nathan sat in his office, staring at the family photo he kept on his desk, a reminder of the family he'd once hoped to have before his ex-wife told him she didn't want children after all. His phone rang. It was Rachel. "I did some digging," she said without preamble. "Sarah and Patricia Reynolds' grandmother owned a house in Oakwood Heights. It's worth nothing now, but there's a major development planned for that area. If it goes through, that property could be worth millions." Nathan suddenly understood. "And who's behind the development?" Rachel's voice was grim. "Davis Properties, your biggest competitor." The pieces fell into place. Patricia was planning to sell the grandmother's house to Michael Davis, Nathan's business rival. But if the property was meant to go to Sarah's children, "Rachel, I need you to find Sarah Reynolds' will if she had one. And I need to know everything about that Oakwood Heights development." As he hung up, Nathan looked toward the guest room where the children slept. What had started as a simple act of kindness was becoming more complicated by the hour. But one thing was clear. Keeping Lily and Tommy safe was no longer just about protecting them from an abusive aunt. Someone wanted those children for their inheritance, and Nathan was now the only thing standing in their way. The next morning, Nathan woke to the sound of laughter. He followed the noise to the kitchen, where he found Lily standing on a step stool at the counter, trying to make pancakes while Tommy sat in a makeshift high chair, babbling happily. "I thought I'd try to make breakfast," Lily explained, her face serious. "Since you're letting us stay," Nathan smiled, touched by her attempt. "How about we make them together?" As they mixed pancake batter, Nathan's phone rang. It was Rachel. "I've got news," she said. "Sarah Reynolds did have a will. She filed it with a small law firm 6 months ago, and you were right. The grandmother's property goes to the children, with Sarah's sister, Patricia as trustee until Lily turns 21. So Patricia can't sell the property without approval," Nathan said, watching Lily carefully pour batter onto the griddle. "That's just it," Rachel replied. "The will has a specific clause forbidding the sale of the property until Lily is of age. Sarah wanted her children to have their grandmother's home." Nathan frowned. "Then how was Patricia planning to sell it to Davis Properties?" "That's the part that doesn't make sense," Rachel admitted. Unless she never planned to honor the will," Nathan finished grimly. "Find out everything you can about Sarah's death. If it wasn't an accident, we need to know." After hanging up, Nathan tried to focus on making breakfast with Lily, but his mind kept returning to Patricia's angry words. "Those kids are worth a lot more to me than you know." Later that morning, Jack called with more troubling news. "We have a problem," the lawyer said. "Patricia Reynolds has filed an emergency motion challenging our temporary custody order. She's claiming you manipulated Lily into making false accusations." Nathan's heart sank. "When's the hearing?" "Tomorrow morning." "And Nathan, she's hired Gregory Bennett." Nathan knew the name well. Bennett was one of the most aggressive family court attorneys in the state, known for ruthless tactics and high win rates. "We'll be ready," Nathan said, though he felt far from confident. After ending the call, Nathan found Lily in the living room, carefully folding baby clothes that Rachel had brought over the previous evening. "Lily," he said gently, sitting beside her. "Tomorrow we have to go to court. A judge is going to decide if you and Tommy can stay with me or if you should go with your Aunt Patricia." Fear immediately clouded Lily's face. "But you promised we wouldn't have to go with her." "I'm going to do everything I can to keep that promise," Nathan assured her. "But I need you to tell the judge exactly what happened when you stayed with your aunt. Can you do that?" Lily nodded solemnly. I'll tell the truth. Mom always said the truth is the strongest thing there is. That afternoon, while Lily was napping with Tommy, Nathan received a surprise visitor. Michael Davis, CEO of Davis Properties and Nathan's longtime business rival, stood on his doorstep with a confident smile. "Nathan," Davis said smoothly, "I heard you've become an overnight father figure. May I come in?" Reluctantly, Nathan led Davis to his office, keeping the door closed so they wouldn't wake the children. "What do you want, Davis?" Nathan asked bluntly. Davis settled into a chair, looking completely at ease. "I'm here to make you an offer that will solve all your problems." "I'm listening," Nathan said cautiously. "I understand you've become attached to the Reynolds children," Davis began, "and now you're caught in an ugly custody battle with their aunt. It's going to get messy, Nathan. Very messy." "Get to the point." Davis leaned forward. "What if I told you I could guarantee you'd get permanent custody of those kids? No more court battles, no more worrying about their aunt taking them away." Nathan's eyes narrowed. "How would you manage that?" "I have connections," Davis said vaguely. "People who owe me favors, including Judge Warner, who happens to be presiding over your case tomorrow." The implication was clear, and it made Nathan's skin crawl. "You're suggesting you can bribe a judge to rule in my favor?" Davis shrugged. "I prefer to call it leveraging relationships, but yes, essentially." "And what do you want in return?" Nathan asked, though he already knew the answer. "The Oakwood Heights property," Davis replied without hesitation. "Once you have custody, you become the children's legal guardian. With the right paperwork, you could manage their inheritance, including selling that property." Nathan stood up, disgusted. "You want me to steal from orphaned children?" Davis laughed. "I'm offering you a win-win, Nathan. You get the kids you've clearly grown fond of, and I get a piece of land I need for my development. The children will still have plenty of money from the sale." "The property isn't for sale," Nathan said firmly. "Their mother specifically wanted them to keep it." Davis's pleasant expression hardened. "Don't be naive. That property is worth millions as part of my development. If you won't cooperate, I'll make the same offer to Patricia Reynolds. She's already expressed interest." Suddenly, everything became clear. "You've already made a deal with her, haven't you? That's why she's so desperate to get the kids back." Davis stood, straightening his expensive suit. "Let's just say Ms. Reynolds is more practical about these matters. Think about my offer, Nathan. By this time tomorrow, those children could be living with their aunt, and I'll still get what I want." After Davis left, Nathan paced his office, anger and worry battling inside him. His phone rang again. It was Rachel. "I found something," she said urgently. The police report on Sarah Reynolds' death had some inconsistencies. The amount of drugs in her system would have incapacitated her immediately, but evidence shows she tried to call someone and wrote something on a piece of paper before she died. "What did the note say?" Nathan asked. "That's just it. The note is missing from evidence." And guess who was the first person on the scene? Patricia Reynolds. She's the one who called it in. A chill ran down Nathan's spine. "Rachel, I think Patricia may have had something to do with her sister's death." "I was thinking the same thing," Rachel replied grimly. "But we need proof before we make accusations like that." "Keep digging," Nathan urged. "And Rachel, Michael. Davis just left my house. He offered to fix the custody hearing in my favor if I sell him the Oakwood Heights property once I have guardianship." Rachel gasped. "That's completely illegal." "He's already made the same deal with Patricia," Nathan said. "That explains why she's so desperate to get custody. She's planning to sell the property against the terms of the will." "We need to tell the judge about this," Rachel insisted. "Without proof, it's just my word against theirs," Nathan pointed out. "We need evidence of their arrangement." That evening, as Nathan tucked Lily into bed, he noticed her looking at a small worn photo she kept under her pillow. "Who's that?" he asked gently. "It's Mom and me at Grandma's house," Lily said, showing him the picture. In it, a younger Sarah, Reynolds stood with a small Lily in front of a modest but charming cottage, surrounded by large oak trees. "Is that the house your mom talked about? The one that would be yours someday?" Lily nodded. "Mom took me there a few times. She said it was special because it's where she grew up, and someday Tommy and I would live there too." Nathan studied the photo, an idea forming. "Lily, do you remember where this house is? Could you find it again?" Lily thought for a moment. I think so. Mom always said it was at the end of Oak Lane with the big tree that looks like a dancing lady. Tomorrow after court maybe we can try to find it, Nathan suggested. Would you like that? Lily's face lit up with the first genuine smile he'd seen since telling her about her mother. Yes, please. After Lily fell asleep, Nathan called Jack to update him on the Davis situation and his suspicions about Patricia's involvement in Sarah's death. This is getting dangerous, Nathan, Jack warned. If what you're suggesting is true, Patricia Reynolds might be capable of anything. All the more reason to make sure she doesn't get those kids, Nathan said firmly. I'll do my best in court tomorrow, Jack promised. But without concrete evidence of wrongdoing, the judge may favor blood relation over a temporary guardian. Nathan barely slept that night, worrying about the hearing and what would happen to Lily and Tommy if he lost. By morning, dark circles shadowed his eyes, but his resolve was stronger than ever. The courthouse was crowded when they arrived. Nathan held Tommy while Lily clutched his hand tightly, her small face solemn in the blue dress Rachel had bought for her to wear to court. Patricia was already there, looking perfectly put together in an expensive suit, her lawyer Gregory Bennett at her side. She shot Nathan a smug smile when she saw him. Don't worry, Nathan whispered to Lily. Just tell the truth, like your mom taught you. Judge Warner entered the courtroom, and Nathan felt a wave of unease remembering Davis's claim that the judge owed him favors. The hearing began with Patricia's lawyer presenting his case. Bennett painted Patricia as a loving aunt who had been maliciously accused by a child manipulated by a stranger with his own agenda. Mr. Cole has known these children for mere days, Bennett argued smoothly. Yet he's turned a vulnerable 9-year-old against her only living relative. One has to wonder about his true motivations. When it was Jack's turn, he called Lily to testify. Nathan's heart ached as the small girl took the stand, looking terrified but determined. Lily, Jack began gently, can you tell the judge what happened the last time you stayed with your Aunt Patricia? Lily took a deep breath. She got mad because I spilled juice on her white rug. She said I was clumsy like my mom and locked me in the closet for a whole day. I didn't get dinner and I had to go to the bathroom in a corner. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Patricia's face flushed with anger. Did you tell your mother about this? Jack asked. Lily nodded. Mom came and got us right away. She told Aunt Patty we would never stay with her again. One more question, Lily, Jack said. Has your aunt ever talked to you about your grandmother's house? Patricia's lawyer shot to his feet. Objection, relevance. I'm establishing the aunt's potential financial motivation, Jack explained. I'll allow it, Judge Warner said, looking curious, despite himself. Aunt Patty told Mom that she should sell Grandma's house, Lily said. They had a big fight about it. Mom said the house was for me and Tommy, not for selling. Bennett's cross-examination was aggressive. He suggested Lily was confused, that she was making up stories to please Nathan. But Lily remained consistent, her voice small but clear as she repeated the truth. When Patricia took the stand, she portrayed herself as a concerned aunt, stepping up to care for her orphaned niece and nephew. Mr. Cole has filled Lily's head with lies, she said, dabbing at non-existent tears. My sister and I had our differences, but I loved her children. I only want what's best for them. Jack's cross-examination was precise. Ms. Reynolds, is it true that you've had discussions with Michael Davis of Davis Properties about selling your mother's house in Oakwood Heights? Patricia hesitated, caught off guard. I may have had preliminary conversations about the property's value. Are you aware that your sister's will specifically prohibits the sale of that property until Lily comes of age? Objection, Bennett shouted. The will hasn't been entered as evidence in this case. Jack smiled and pulled out a document. I'd like to enter Sarah Reynolds' last will and testament as evidence now, Your Honor. Judge Warner accepted the will, and Nathan saw a flicker of uncertainty cross his face as he read it. Maybe Davis didn't have as much influence as he claimed. As the hearing continued, Nathan bounced Tommy on his knee, trying to keep the baby quiet. Suddenly, the courtroom doors opened, and Rachel slipped in, her face flushed with excitement. She hurried to Jack and whispered something in his ear. Jack's eyes widened, and he immediately requested a brief recess. Judge Warner granted it, looking annoyed at the interruption. Outside the courtroom, Rachel showed Nathan and Jack what she'd found, a recording on her phone. "I got Michael Davis on tape," she said triumphantly. "I pretended to be interested in investing in his Oakwood Heights development. He bragged about having Patricia Reynolds in his pocket and how once she had custody of the kids, she'd sign over their property to him for a fraction of its worth." Nathan listened to the recording, hardly daring to believe their luck. "That's not all," Rachel continued, pulling out a small evidence bag. "I went to the motel where Sarah Reynolds died. The cleaning staff found this wedged behind the nightstand and kept it because they thought it might be important. Inside the bag was a crumpled piece of paper with shaky handwriting. Patty threatened me. If anything happens, tell police, protect kids. Property worth millions now." Nathan stared at the note in shock. This is what the police report mentioned. The note Sarah wrote before she died. When court reconvened, Jack requested permission to present new evidence. Despite Bennett's objections, Judge Warner allowed it. The recording of Davis played for the courtroom, followed by the presentation of Sarah's last note. Patricia's face turned ashen as her sister's final words were read aloud. "Your Honor," Jackie said firmly, "we have evidence suggesting that Patricia Reynolds may have been involved in her sister's death, motivated by the desire to gain control of valuable property left to the children. At minimum, we ask that custody remain with Mr. Cole while a full investigation takes place." Judge Warner looked troubled. He called the attorneys to approach the bench for a hushed conversation that Nathan couldn't hear. When they returned to their tables, Jack looked cautiously optimistic. "In light of the serious allegations presented today," Judge Warner announced, "I am extending the temporary custody order, granting guardianship of Lily and Tommy Reynolds to Nathan Cole for a period of 60 days. During this time, the police will investigate Ms. Reynolds' potential involvement in her sister's death and her plans regarding the children's inheritance." Patricia shot to her feet. "This is outrageous. He's not even family." "Ms. Reynolds," the judge said sternly, "I suggest you remain silent before you give me reason to remand you to custody, pending investigation." As they left the courthouse, Nathan carried Tommy while holding Lily's hand. The little girl looked up at him, her eyes shining with hope. "Does this mean we can stay with you?" she asked. Nathan nodded, his throat tight with emotion. "For now, yes, and maybe for longer if that's what you want." Lily's small hand squeezed his. "I want to stay with you forever. You make good pancakes." Nathan laughed, feeling lighter than he had in days. "I think you're the one who makes good pancakes, kiddo." That afternoon, following Lily's directions, they drove to Oakwood Heights to find her grandmother's house. The neighborhood was run down with many abandoned properties, but at the end of Oak Lane stood a small cottage that matched the one in Lily's photo. And there in the front yard was an ancient oak tree with branches that did indeed look like a dancing lady. As they walked up the overgrown path, Nathan understood why Sarah had fought to keep this place. Despite years of neglect, the cottage had charm and character that no modern development could match. "This was my room," Lily said excitedly, running to a small bedroom with faded butterfly wallpaper. "And Mom said Tommy could have the room next. When he gets bigger." Watching Lily explore her family home, Nathan felt a fierce determination to honor Sarah's wishes. These children deserved to grow up in the house their mother had loved, not see it bulldozed for another soulless development. Back at Nathan's house that evening, after the children were asleep, Rachel brought more news. "The police have officially reopened the investigation into Sarah Reynolds' death," she said. "And there's more. The medical examiner found needle marks on Sarah's arm that don't match the injection pattern of a regular user. They're now treating it as a potential homicide." Nathan shook his head, saddened by the confirmation of his suspicions, but relieved that the truth might finally come out. "What about the Oakwood Heights development?" he asked. Rachel smiled. "That's actually the good news. I've been running the numbers, and if we revise our Riverside project to include affordable housing, we could qualify for the new state incentives. The profits would be comparable to Davis's Oakwood Heights plan." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "You want us to compete with Davis's development?" "Better than that," Rachel said, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "I want us to beat him at his own game." If we announce our Riverside plans now, investors will flock to us instead of him. Without funding, his Oakwood Heights project will collapse. Nathan considered the idea. It was a good business move, but more importantly, it would protect Lily and Tommy's inheritance. Let's do it, he decided. First thing tomorrow, we'll announce the revised Riverside project. As Rachel left, Nathan checked on the children one last time. Tommy slept peacefully in his crib, a real one that Nathan had bought that morning. In the next bed, Lily clutched her mother's photo as she slept. Looking at these two children who had crashed into his life just days ago, Nathan realized how empty his existence had been before them. His luxurious house had never felt like a home until their laughter filled it. Whatever happened with Patricia and the investigation, Nathan knew one thing for certain. He would do everything in his power to give these children the life their mother had wanted for them, and maybe in the process he would find the family he had always longed for. 3 weeks had passed since the courthouse hearing. Nathan sat at his home office desk, reviewing the latest report from the police investigation into Sarah Reynolds' death. With each new piece of evidence, Patricia's involvement became clearer. "Nathan," Lily's excited voice called from downstairs. "Rachel's here, and she brought donuts." Nathan smiled, setting the report aside. The changes in Lily over these weeks had been remarkable. The frightened child he'd found in an empty house was gradually being replaced by a more confident, happy girl. Downstairs, he found Rachel in the kitchen with Lily and Tommy. The baby sat in his high chair, happily smashing a small piece of donut into his face, while Lily carefully arranged the rest on a plate. "You're spoiling them," Nathan teased Rachel, who had taken on the role of honorary aunt to the children. Rachel shrugged. "Someone has to, since you've become so serious lately." She wasn't wrong. Between running his company, caring for the children, and cooperating with the police investigation, Nathan had little time for anything else. "I have news," Rachel said, her expression turning serious once Lily was occupied with feeding Tommy. "The police arrested Patricia this morning." Nathan's eyes widened. "They found enough evidence?" Rachel nodded. "They found the syringe in her car with traces of the same drug that killed Sarah, and they have text messages between her and Michael Davis discussing plans for the property, messages that dated from before Sarah's death." Nathan felt a complicated mix of emotions: relief that justice would be served, sadness for what the children had lost, and lingering worry about their future. "What happens now?" he asked. "The district attorney believes they have enough for a murder conviction," Rachel explained. "As for Davis, he's facing charges of conspiracy and attempting to bribe a judge. The Oakwood Heights development is definitely dead." Nathan glanced at Lily, who was wiping chocolate from Tommy's chubby cheeks, blissfully unaware of the conversation. "And what about the children?" Rachel smiled. "That's actually why I came by. Jack called this morning. Given the circumstances, the court is fast-tracking your petition for permanent guardianship. The hearing is scheduled for next week." Hope bloomed in Nathan's chest. For weeks he'd been worried that once the crisis with Patricia was resolved, the court might still decide to place the children with foster families rather than with him, a single man with no prior relationship to them. "Do we have a chance?" he asked quietly. "Jack thinks so. The children are thriving with you, the home study came back positive, and there are no other family members stepping forward," Rachel said. "Plus, you've been working to restore their grandmother's house, just as their mother wanted." It was true. Nathan had spent weekends with Lily at the cottage, cleaning and making basic repairs. He'd hired contractors to address the structural issues, but the small projects, painting Lily's bedroom, planting flowers in the garden, those they did together. "Nathan, can we go to Grandma's house today?" Lily asked, joining their conversation. "I want to show Tommy the dancing tree." "Not today, sweetheart," Nathan replied. "I have a surprise planned instead." Lily's eyes lit up. "What kind of surprise?" I told you it wouldn't be a surprise, would it?" Nathan teased, tapping her nose. "Go get cleaned up and we'll leave in 30 minutes. After Lily raced upstairs, Rachel raised an eyebrow. "A surprise?" Nathan smiled mysteriously. "You'll find out soon enough. In fact, why don't you join us? I could use the extra hands." 2 hours later, Nathan's SUV pulled into the parking lot of Build a Friend. a store where children could create their own stuffed animals. Lily's eyes grew wide with excitement. "Really? Can I make one?" she asked, practically bouncing in her seat. "You can make two," Nathan said. "One for you and one for Tommy, since he's too little to make his own." Lily threw her arms around Nathan's neck. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." Inside the colorful store, Lily carefully considered every option before selecting a teddy bear for herself and a soft puppy for Tommy. She followed every step of the creation process with serious concentration, from stuffing the animals to selecting tiny outfits for them. "The puppy needs a heart too," she told the store employee solemnly. "So Tommy will always know he's loved." Nathan watched her place. A small fabric heart inside the puppy before it was stitched closed, his own heart full to bursting. In just a few weeks, this child had taught him more about love than he'd learned in 45 years of life. Rachel stood beside him, smiling at Lily's joy. "You know," she said quietly, "a year ago, if someone had told me that Nathan Cole, the man who once scheduled a business meeting on Christmas Day, would be spending his Saturday in a stuffed animal store, I would have laughed in their face." Nathan chuckled. "I would have too. It's amazing how quickly things can change." Rachel's expression softened. "It suits you, you know, being a dad." The word hit Nathan like a physical force. Dad. Was that what he was becoming to these children? The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. "Do you think they'll let me?" he asked quietly. "Become their legal guardian, I mean. I think anyone who sees you with those kids would have to be blind not to see you belong together," Rachel replied honestly. Later that afternoon, as they walked through the park with ice cream cones, Lily's new teddy bear tucked under her arm, and Tommy contentedly clutching his puppy in his stroller, Nathan allowed himself to imagine a future with these children. He pictured birthday parties and school plays, teaching Lily to ride a bike and Tommy to throw a ball. He imagined Christmases and summer vacations, homework at the kitchen table, and bedtime stories. "Nathan," Lily's voice interrupted his thoughts. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course," he said, sitting down on a park bench and patting the space. Beside him, Lily sat down, licking her ice cream cone thoughtfully before asking, "If the judge says we can stay with you forever, will we live in your big house or at Grandma's cottage?" Nathan hadn't expected that question. "Well, I thought we'd live in my house but visit the cottage often. Maybe spend weekends there. Would you like that?" Lily nodded slowly. "I like your house, but Mom always said the cottage was our real home." Nathan considered her words carefully. "What if we did both? We could live at my house for now while the cottage is being fixed up. Then when it's ready, we could decide together whether to move there or keep it as a special place we visit." Lily seemed satisfied with this answer. "I think Mom would like that. She always said home is where the people you love are, not just a building." "Your mom was very wise," Nathan said, his throat tightening with emotion. "I miss her," Lily said, simply, a shadow passing over her face. "I know you do," Nathan replied, putting his arm around her small shoulders. "And you always will. But it's okay to be happy too. I think that's what she would want most of all." Lily leaned against him, a silent acceptance of his comfort. They sat that way for a while, watching Tommy babble happily in his stroller, waving his new puppy. "Nathan," Lily asked after a few minutes, "if we stay with you forever, what should I call you?" The question caught him off guard. "Well, what would you like to call me?" Lily thought for a moment. "Some kids at my old school who lived with people who weren't their parents called them by their first names, but some called them Mom and Dad, even though they weren't their real ones." Nathan chose his words carefully. "You can call me Nathan for as long as you want, but if someday you feel like calling me something else, that would be okay too." Lily nodded, seriously processing this information. "I think Nathan is good for now, but maybe someday—" She didn't finish the thought, but she didn't need to. Nathan understood. The day of the guardianship hearing arrived with clear skies and a gentle breeze. Nathan had barely slept, going over every possible scenario in his mind. What if the judge said no? What if someone else stepped forward with a claim? What if, after everything, he still lost these children? Jack met them at the courthouse, looking confident in his best suit. "Everything's in order," he assured Nathan. "The home study was excellent, the character references were glowing, and the children's court advocate is firmly on our side." Nathan nodded, trying to calm his nerves. Lily, dressed in a pretty blue dress that Rachel had helped her pick out, held his hand tightly. Tommy, in a tiny button-up shirt and pants, was fascinated by the high ceilings of the courthouse. "Mr. Cole," a familiar voice called. It was Sandra Wilson, from Child Protective Services, approaching with a warm smile. "I just wanted to wish you luck today, though I don't think you'll need it. My report to the judge was very positive." "Thank you," Nathan said sincerely. Sandra knelt to Lily's level. "And how are you feeling today, Lily? Are you nervous?" Lily shook her head. "Not really. Nathan says the judge just wants to make sure we're happy and safe, and we are." Sandra smiled. "That's exactly right." Inside the courtroom, the proceedings were much less dramatic than the custody hearing had been. The judge, an older woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner, reviewed the paperwork carefully before addressing Nathan directly. "Mr. Cole, taking on the guardianship of 2 young children is a tremendous responsibility," she said, "particularly for someone with no prior parenting experience and a demanding career. What makes you believe you're the right person for this role?" Nathan took a deep breath. He'd prepared for this question, but now the carefully rehearsed answer seemed inadequate. "Your Honor, 3 weeks ago, I would have given you a list of practical reasons: stable finances, a safe home, resources for education," he began. "But now I understand that none of those things are what really matter." He glanced at Lily, who watched him with complete trust in her eyes. "The truth is," Nathan continued, "these children have changed my life in ways I never expected. Before them, I measured success in dollars and deals. Now I measure it in moments: Lily's laughter, Tommy's first attempts to crawl, bedtime stories, and pancake breakfasts." The judge's expression softened slightly. "I can't replace what they've lost," Nathan said, his voice thick with emotion. "But I can promise to honor their mother's memory, to keep them together as she wanted, to protect their inheritance as she intended, and to love them with everything I have for as long as I live." The courtroom was silent for a moment after he finished speaking. "Lily," the judge said gently, "would you like to say anything?" Lily stood up, her small shoulders squared with determination. "Nathan found us when we were scared and hungry. He didn't have to help us, but he did. He reads me stories and never gets mad when Tommy cries at night. He's teaching me to ride a bike, and he's fixing Grandma's house just like Mom wanted." She took a breath and then added simply, "We want to stay with him. He makes us feel safe." The judge nodded, a smile touching her lips. "Thank you, Lily. That helps me very much." After reviewing the final reports and hearing brief statements from Sandra Wilson and the children's advocate, the judge made her decision. "Having considered all the evidence and recommendations, I find it in the best interest of Lily and Thomas Reynolds to grant permanent guardianship to Nathan Cole." The formal words continued, but Nathan barely heard them. A weight lifted from his shoulders as he realized it was really happening. These children were officially going to be part of his life forever. Lily's hand squeezed his, and when he looked down at her, the joy in her face mirrored what he felt in his heart. Outside the courthouse, Rachel waited with a camera to capture the moment. "Say cheese," she called, as Nathan stood with Lily holding Tommy between them. "We did it!" Lily cheered, hugging Nathan tightly around the waist. "We sure did, kiddo," Nathan said, his voice rough with emotion. That evening, they celebrated with a small party at Nathan's house. Jack and Rachel joined them, along with Sandra Wilson and a few of the nurses from the hospital who had grown fond of the children during the investigation. "A toast," Jack proposed, raising his glass. "To Nathan, Lily, and Tommy, proof that families come in all shapes and sizes." As everyone clinked glasses, Nathan noticed Lily yawning. "Bedtime for you, young lady," he said gently. Upstairs, after Tommy was settled in his crib, Nathan sat on the edge of Lily's bed for their nightly story time. But Lily had a different idea. "Can I tell you a story tonight?" she asked, surprised. Nathan nodded. "I'd like that very much." Lily sat up in bed, her new teddy bear in her arms. "Once upon a time," she began in a solemn voice, "there was a little girl and her baby brother, who were all alone in an empty house." Nathan's heart constricted, recognizing their own story. "They were scared and hungry," Lily continued, "until one day a man found them. He wasn't a prince or a knight like in fairy tales. He was just a regular man who wore ties and talked on the phone a lot." Nathan smiled at the description. But even though he wasn't used to children, he took them home and gave them food and new clothes. He protected them from the mean aunt who wanted to take them away. And every day he showed them that they weren't alone anymore. Lily looked up at Nathan, her eyes shining. The end. Or maybe not the end. Maybe just the beginning. Nathan swallowed past the lump in his throat. "I think you're right, it's just the beginning." As he tucked her in, Lily asked sleepily, "Are we a family now, for real?" "Yes," Nathan said, kissing her forehead. "We're a family for real." Downstairs, the guests were preparing to leave. Rachel lingered behind, helping Nathan clean up. "So," she said casually, "now that you're officially a family man, what's next?" Nathan thought about how much his life had changed in just a few short weeks. "First, I'm taking a month off work. We're going to finish the renovations on the cottage, and then we're going on a proper vacation, the first one I've taken in years." Rachel looked shocked. "Who are you, and what have you done with Nathan Cole?" Nathan laughed. "He's still here, just with different priorities now." After Rachel left, Nathan checked on the children one last time before settling onto the couch with a stack of children's books. He wanted to familiarize himself with all the stories Lily loved, to be able to answer Tommy's questions when he started talking. His phone rang. It was Jack. "I just got word from the DA," his lawyer said without preamble. "Patricia Reynolds has agreed to a plea deal. 20 years for the murder of her sister, with no possibility of parole for at least 15. Nathan let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "And Davis?" "Facing multiple charges, including conspiracy and attempted bribery. His company's stock is tanking, and investors are pulling out of all his projects. I don't think he'll be a problem for you anymore." "Good," Nathan said simply. "The children deserve justice for their mother." After hanging up, Nathan walked to the large windows overlooking his backyard. In the fading evening light, he could see the swing set he'd had installed last weekend and the small vegetable garden he'd helped Lily plant. 6 weeks ago, this house had been just a showcase, expensive but empty, like much of his life. Now toys littered the floor, crayon drawings covered the refrigerator, and the sound of children's laughter echoed through rooms that had once been silent. Nathan remembered the moment he'd first stepped into that abandoned house and heard a small whimper. If he had ignored it, if he had called the authorities instead of investigating himself, his life would be completely different now. The next morning, as Nathan made pancakes, he'd finally mastered them, Lily sat at the counter with a serious expression. "I've been thinking," she announced, "about Grandma's cottage." "Oh?" Nathan flipped a pancake, trying not to show how nervous her tone made him. "What about it?" "I think we should live there," Lily said, "but not all the time. Maybe just in the summer and on weekends." "Is that okay?" Relief washed over Nathan. "I think that's a perfect idea. And," Lily continued, "I think we should paint your house. It's pretty, but it's very grey." Nathan laughed. "What color would you prefer?" Lily considered this seriously. "Blue, like the sky on a happy day." "Blue it is," Nathan agreed. "We'll start with your room and Tommy's, and then we can decide about the rest." Satisfied with this plan, Lily hopped down to check on Tommy, who was contentedly playing in his playpen. As Nathan served the pancakes, perfectly golden this time, his phone buzzed with an email from his office. Another development opportunity, another chance to add to his already substantial wealth. 6 weeks ago, he would have dropped everything to pursue it. Now, he set the phone aside without a second thought. The real opportunities he'd discovered weren't in business deals or property acquisitions. They were in a little girl's smile and a baby boy's laughter, in bedtime stories and morning pancakes, in transforming houses into homes and strangers into family. "Nathan," Lily called from the living room, "Tommy's trying to crawl." "Coming," Nathan called back, hurrying to witness the moment. As he knelt beside the playpen, watching Tommy push himself up on wobbly arms, Nathan knew with absolute certainty that he'd found what truly mattered. Not in boardrooms or bank accounts, but in an empty house where two children had been waiting for someone to hear them. For the first time in his life, Nathan Cole understood what true wealth really was, and he'd never felt richer.